how you welcome. Here we go to this week's podcast. Okay, this is probably going to be one of my favorite podcasts because of you that you are here. People are going to see your name, but if they're just listening, they're not going to know who you are yet. But if they use the Year of Playing Skillfully curriculum in September, you're one of the first names they should see. So I will introduce you, lovely MaryAnn Kohl. Oh, you are so lovely.
Happy.
One of my favorite.
We have a mutual admiration society here. I think you are the top of the line for really relating to people.
Aw.
So you make me happy every day.
Oh, MaryAnn. I mean, we do not see each other enough. In fact, it's probably been sadly close to 8 or more years.
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years, for sure. Yes, over 5 years. Yeah. I hate that. We've got to change that. I need to come see you because I love where you live.
Okay, we'll go kayaking or maybe go on a whale
ride. Every single time I kayak, and I kayak here at the lake where I live, but every time I kayak, MaryAnn, I think of you and how much fun we had in that silly little kayak trip that we took. Anyway, people don't want to hear about that. The reason I asked you here is because when I think of process art, and if you guys have heard me talk, you know I kind of rant about it, to be honest. But when I think of it, MaryAnn, I think of you, and I think of all of the years that you have talked about, written about, all the things about process art. So what I want you to do is tell us just how you got into art in the first place, being kind of your love.
My goodness. Well, do we go back to childhood?
Sure.
You know, yes, I've never been what you would, I've never been what you'd call an artist, but I've always loved art. And one of my first memories is standing on my bed as a maybe 3-year-old, crayons in both hands, like, 10 here and 8 here, and going like this on the wall, on the white wall behind my bed, and seeing the colors mixing and just being like, how did this happen? What is this? And then my mom coming in and being the best mom said, "Oh, honey, let me get you some paper. We don't draw on the walls." Which we don't. But, that was, and then the next memory was coloring with a popsicle in my coloring book because I just thought my orange popsicle would do what it should do, but it didn't do what it should do. So what you're seeing there is experimentation and discovery.
Absolutely.
And exploring. And so as I look back now, I realize, oh, that was my process art at a very young age. Just, hey, here's an art material. What can you do with it? And then later I became a primary school teacher and also a preschool teacher. And I found, especially in second grade, that when the kids were doing art of any kind, they were quiet and they were happy. And, there's always that one kid, what to do? Or can you do it for me? And we get through all that. But in general, it was just this learning time that was magical. And so I started bringing art into everything we did, into math and science. And, I wanted a quiet classroom, right? But what I was really seeing was that the kids were so engaged that I thought art is a whole lot more than I ever thought it was.
Right.
They don't teach as much about it in college. But so that was my beginning. And when I retired, well, I didn't really retire. I quit teaching to raise my little babies. And I thought,
girls,
I'm going to take all my favorite art ideas and make it into a book. And I felt like I didn't have time to find a publisher, so I read up on how you can do it yourself, and I did it, with no real knowledge of what publishing was, and it became a hit. And at that time, it was called Scribble Cookies. Scribble Cookies, and then when it was in a bookstore, they'd put it in the cooking section, so then I had to change the title to Scribble Art. And now it's in its 3rd edition, gone from little black and white drawings to now full color photographs of kids doing art.
Did I see earlier you have that? You want to show us what it looks like? Is this the 3rd edition that you have beside you? I do.
I do have it. Funny how you have it right with me.
Right. Look at that.
So it says Scribble Art, and then I have to turn this over independent process art experiences for children. Notice they're not art projects. They're art experiences, completely different. So again,
so many times, there it is. So many times I have people ask me when I suggest an activity, what's the purpose? What's the purpose? How would you answer that question? What's the purpose?
Well, there are probably, I'm going to narrow it down to say there's like 5 actual purposes, but the most important one is for the child to have self-expression and creativity and to trust themselves. They're not copying an adult saying it has to look this way and let's make all the kids do it exactly this way. Because at the end, yes, they've learned to follow directions, but what else? That's usually about it.
Right.
There are always kids like me who, when I was a child, that's all the only kind of art we did was following directions. And I would be like trying to do my own little thing and someone would come around and say, oh no, we're not doing that. You know, you've made the boat blue and everyone's doing brown because it's Columbus Day or whatever. I remember that specifically.
Right, I do too.
You can't have a blue boat. And I suppose, you know, when you're learning about something like Columbus Day, I'm going off here a little bit, but then maybe it makes sense to do the boat was brown, so let's make it brown. But for process art, here's the materials. And the adult can choose what to put out, or kids can choose their own. But here's the materials. What can you do? And they just start exploring. Oh, this crayon on its side does this. Oh, my crayon broke. Oh, look what it does now. And so it's constantly learning through experience, through exploration, through experimentation. I don't think I answered your question, but I did have fun saying all that.
You did kind of what's the purpose, and that I think the things that I heard you say, self-expression, so important, and trust yourself. Like, to me, that is the one that stands out, because so many children, I will watch them engage in materials and immediately they'll stop and look at the adult to get some affirmation. Like, did I do it right? And so if we could get rid of that, where they are just exploring with everything in them and just experiencing, I think then we've succeeded with art.
With that attitude young, where the adult respects the child's own creativity. If they start with that young, by the time they're into elementary school, they are so confident and so kind of on fire about the inner, confidence again. I'm going to read a little paragraph that says something else I think is important. I happen to have written this paragraph.
Okay. That's going to be good.
Okay, I think it is. You can say no, but it says, and I'm speaking of myself, I believe that art builds better humans to lead our civilization forward. And why is that? Art contributes to encouraging children to grow to be society's problem solvers, thinkers, inventors, and more, and not just society's followers.
Preach. Yes, I say that all the time. I agree with everything. I say that all the time, because if you have children who aren't creating, who aren't thinking for themselves at 3, 4, 5, when it becomes 15, 16, 25, it's over. And
then you start hearing that, I don't know how to do that. And I'm talking, middle school kids I've worked with. I don't know how to do that. I can't draw, that sort of thing. And I have to throw in, with a recent middle school workshop that I did, I think there were just a classroom of kids, like 25, 30 kids, big kids. And I had process art stations in this room. And they're like, I don't know what to do. And I finally said, there are no rules about art for you kids today. You can do whatever you want. Just go try the materials. And within like 10 minutes, the room goes quiet. They're involved, engaged. And then there's the, look what I made, and then the question, do you like it, Mrs. Kohl? And I always have that very annoying answer where I say, do you like it?
Do you like it?
What do you like about it? Because it's not for me to judge. And they would laugh. Like I said, do you like it? Tell me what you like about it. Or what happened here with that red splooge over there? How did that happen? And they become very talkative about themselves. I know middle schoolers love themselves just like toddlers do. So
It's really interesting when you give middle schoolers, especially, like some sensory type of process, a
oh,
dough or something, and to manipulate that dough while they're talking. It is amazing how it just helps them relax, their brain's engaged, and then they're just all of a sudden just babbling away. And you're like, what happened? I always tell parents that if you have a
I'm
teenager
really
who won't
glad you
talk to
said that because we're talking about now, probably early childhood, you and I, but
you, yeah,
they don't stay early childhood; they become adults. So what's
they
the
do.
benefit of doing what we do? And again, I think it builds confidence. It builds humans who, as I said, lead society forward or civilization. We don't want to lose civilization. So and thinkers, inventors, just not just followers. So, but they have to learn to trust themselves in order to do that. Process
I
art's
rem-
the perfect place.
I remember being at a conference and I had put out some Play-Doh for the kids to come and experience. And it was so interesting. This one little child was so engaged and he was working away, and we had put some sticks and some rocks and some just nature items as support pieces for his dough. And he was so busy. And all of a sudden, a grown-up came over and started making a
Oh
snowman.
no.
Correct. Within minutes, the child next to him made a snowman. Another child walks up and immediately makes a snowman. And instead of having this original piece of artwork, it immediately became copycat central of this adult's activity. And it was so heartbreaking. And the adult had no clue. They were super proud that this kid was copying. And it makes me go back to the saying that I always say is educating the children begins with educating the adults in their lives. And so that's why we're doing this. We want parents to understand, man, this matters. It matters that you let
It
your
does.
kids experience paint and experience dough and experience tearing paper and experience, any kind of material you can think of pretty much can be art. Do you have some favorites? Like, what's your favorite material that you would put out for young kids?
Well, I was just going to say that interaction with the parent limited
Yeah,
it limited the child's
correct. Brought it
creativity. It
in.
didn't maybe it gave them a new idea to try it. Okay, snowmen are fun to make. I have
Sure.
no problem with that part of creativity or lack of, but it shouldn't be. It should only be a minor part of what children do. So favorites. That is the hardest question in the world. But let's find an age group to talk about because that can make differences. Let's say 2 to 4 years old.
Yes.
Easy to put scraps of chopped up paper out on the table and give the child a paper plate and maybe a little jar lid with some glue in it with a little Q-tip to apply glue, and they just start gluing paper, scrap, scrap, scrap. And you look around, if you've got more than one child, none of them look alike. Some kids, well, the kid who's going to find a way to do something you've never thought of.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then people say, well, what about the mess?
Absolutely.
And
That's going to be, what about the mess? Go ahead.
I think there are days when you say, I am really not ready for any mess today. But
Yeah.
most of the days, gluing little scraps of paper is not going to be a mess. But you should prepare in some way, which would be, if you're worried about your table, cover the table with newspaper, if anyone still has a newspaper. I use an old shower curtain to cover my table when my granddaughters visit. In fact, I leave it up the whole time they're here.
Smart.
Because, so, and then what I mentioned, like a little jar lid with some glue in it and a Q-tip, put a loop of tape on the bottom of that little jar lid so it sticks to the table and it won't turn over when they push the Q-tip.
Right.
Little things like that you learn as you go. You can't know all these things when you start. But another favorite thing to do, if this is in a home and a classroom, is to have a shelf where children have free access to the materials. Crayons.
Huge.
Oh, kids love staplers, but that's a whole other world.
They do.
They love tools.
They love
So what would be in that shelf? well, the kids can help collect things, go outside. You get some leaves or pine cones. If you live in an area where you have access to that, put it in a little shoebox or a container. Fill the shelf with things they have free access to. They get used to what's there. You can change it, add, take away. But they learn to just go and find their own thinking, their own creativity, looking at those materials. It's not always gluing. Are we scared of paint? I'm not.
I'm not. Well, and again, I think you made a great point. It can be a little bit. You don't have to bring the whole paint bottle out and just set it on the shelf. I mean, you can do small amount of things. There are so many containers now. I like to buy the little disposable, like if you're going to make condiments to go, the little plastic with the lid. You can just, yes, use those, put a little paint in those. You could have a few of those on the shelf that even if spilled is not going to make a,
right.
huge mess.
And, that for some people, that means they might need to also put a shower curtain on the floor under a table. I mean, it depends on someone's setup and what's, from the home setup for homeschooling or just a mom who wants to do cool stuff with her kids or to a classroom where kids are constantly changing. I mean, everything's up in the air for how you organize, but it doesn't have to be super organized. So one of another truly favorite thing to do besides like basic collage with the scraps of paper, I'm thinking one of the things that the kids love most is if you have an old inexpensive cooler chest that has the styrofoam lid, put that lid on the table or any styrofoam from packing computers or whatever, and give them things that can poke into the styrofoam golf piece, a little hammer. Pipe cleaners, put beads on the pipe cleaners. Don't do it for them. Let them figure it out. But they love poking things into styrofoam. What can I say? And that's all ages.
Yeah. And lacing.
For a 2-year-old, it's hard.
Yeah.
With that.
Well, I think they love anything that they poking does seem to be something they love. But that even like with Play-Doh, I mean, give them tools instead of giving them cookie cutters, give them other things. Let them go collect things they can poke and cut even with. Let them figure out, what do I need to cut and change the shape of this? Don't just provide it all. If we provide everything for them, they're not having to think, how can I change that? But boy, if you don't provide it, they will go searching or they will tell you what they need. And I think be flexible to get it. Like be flexible to say, why not? Instead of why do you need that? Well, why wouldn't you need that? Of course you would need that. And, jump in and say, why not?
Based on what you just said, I like to make things easy for people who are working with children. So in my books, you'll always find that the materials I use are common. You can either get them at a grocery store or at the dollar store or whatever. But one thing I started doing was, let's say, Play-Doh. So now we've got like five days this week, and I made Play-Doh. So first day, just Play-Doh on the table, no tools. Second day, Play-Doh comes back out. Oh, now we've got a rolling pin and a fork. Third day, rolling pin and fork gone. Now we've got whatever. Keep changing the tools with the same materials. And now it's not just Play-Doh that you squish. It becomes this material that has endless possibilities. So changing tools or basic materials is good. Same with painting. A little child goes up to the paint easel, plain piece of paper, maybe a few little cups with brushes, and off they go. And then the next day the paint easel maybe has a piece of paper and someone cut a big hole out of that paper. And they're like, go to the easel, there's a hole in the paper. What do I do? And a lot of kids paint around, other kids paint inside. Next day, change that easel to chalk with plain paper. Next day. So you see where that can go. You're using the same stuff over and over and over with slight changes, which gives that experimentation, that exploration, that discovery, new paths in the brain. And those are pathways.
Absolutely.
The pathways opening up.
Absolutely. And I think people discount that. They discount that art has a cognitive benefit. I think people are like, oh, wait, how is my child going to be smarter because of art? And they don't realize it just in that the critical thinking aspect, the language development, all of those things are developing pathways and strengthening pathways in the brain when they're doing that at a young age. And that problem solving that they have to do. How can I change this? What can I do next? That too is strengthening.
And they do so much problem solving. I know I was just spending a little time with my kindergarten granddaughter one-on-one, and we had some paint out. And she was like, I don't like this. I made brown. I said, well, okay, so what do you think you need to change so it's not brown? And she said, well, I guess I mixed so much stuff together, and so let's get another piece of paper, and now try a different way. But that was through just one-on-one talking together. And in a group of kids, you don't really always have time to like go through that kind of discussion with kids. But the more they experiment, the more confidence they have, and the more willing to try they are. And they're not put off by what adults might call mistakes. They just go, oh, well, look what I learned here. I'm not going to do that again. Or, oh my gosh, I had no idea that could be so beautiful. You know.
Well, and I think you said another important thing, though, is how you responded. I think that's a lesson too, MaryAnn, is so many, I think at times we as parents get guilty. The child makes the brown paint.
Yes.
And you're like, well, I'm so sorry. You made the brown paint. We're done now because I told you not to mix the paint. Well, it's kind of a natural reaction. You see two colors, you want to mix them. So I think it's to be celebrated. Look at that. Just what you said. What happened?
How are they supposed to know until they've done it? You can tell them, oh, if you mix all those colors, you're just going to get mushy black
Right.
and brown gunk. Well, you can tell them that, and maybe they internalize it, but if they do it, totally get it. From then on, it's like a 1 minute lesson, you know.
It is, and it's so worth it. And again, if you're only using a little bit of paint, you've not wasted whole bottles or things like that. They're not dumping everything.
That's so
you just
important.
start with a little bit.
You know, I know it's all these years. I think I started all this in 1985, so you can imagine how old I really am, like 120.
Wow.
But so many times the parents are so loving and so interested and so concerned, and so they want to see art that proves that the child did a good job, and so they want to see those cute little crafts like a bunny made out of a paper plate or I don't know. I mean, there's so many, you know. But we need to be working with adults to encourage them to, my child is learning, and it doesn't have to look like anything. Because with this mousse that they brought home is actually like a road map. They won't be able to see it, but the child could probably tell them how this happened.
Absolutely.
So it's a different way for parents and for many teachers and homeschool parents to look and say, oh, this is okay to explore and experiment. It's okay if it doesn't look like it.
My favorite story as a parent, I remember when John Michael, who's now 30, he was little, and we went to like the bookstore. You know how they used to have like Mommy and Me crafts? You would go.
Yeah.
So they had a Mother's Day event, and they were making cute little magnet frames that you could do. And they had all this collage stuff. Oh, so fun. Collage stuff was real. And it was so fun. And I looked down the aisle, and I am telling you, everyone other than John Michael had a parent that had taken over. And they were putting the little things on the frame so that it looked pretty. And my sweet John Michael just had the glue. He never even got to the collage things. He just was having so much fun with the glue that he just kept designing his the frame with glue and more glue and more glue. And I remember, I can so clearly remember this mom looking at me with a bless your heart, your little boy. Look that. Do you know that glued frame hung on my refrigerator for so many years? It was magnificent because he, was delighted at what he had created for his mother. And I had nothing to do with it except to watch. And it was fabulous. And at the same time, a little bit heartbroken watching these other children. They were probably looking at John Michael going, man, you're having all the fun over there. But it's just the way you look at it.
Having fun. But there was no particular other benefit than they got to work with their mom and be together. Sure. I mean, it wasn't about
Which
art,
is great.
you know.
Which is great.
Yeah, it has its own particular thing. But, I always think, too, this whole thing with process art, and I'm looking down at some notes I made because I wanted to touch on a couple things. Problem-solving skills. We're talking about making kids confident and exploring. So I'm going to read a little sentence. When children explore art materials, they're testing possibilities. They're working through challenges, much like a scientist who is doing science experiments and trying to get a result. They're trying to find solutions, like, should I try a shorter piece of yarn? This tape isn't holding. What should I do? So art allows children to assess their own work, and they will, if they're allowed to do it enough that they learn that they have permission.
Correct.
Without someone coming in and, like you were saying, zooming in, oh no, whatever. And it is a lot of, oh no, you can't do that, do this. So we do have to be careful with that.
What's our expectations, right? We want to kind of put our expectations on that process. And we often, as the adults, expect an end result. And really, that is process art.
We've already painted with tempera paint because we're like, I'm not this age, but like you're a 35-year-old mom, you've already painted, you've done Play-Doh with your own self. And so you're at a different level now. And you kind of want to expect the child to do the same thing you're doing, but they've never touched Play-Doh before, that type of thing. So we have to step back. And I often, when I work with preschool teachers, I often say, present the materials and set them.
Absolutely. You're a facilitator. That's kind of what I say. You're a facilitator. Yeah. Your role is to set it up and then get out of the way, basically, is what I say it a little harsher. Get out of the way.
Yeah, and you may see things happening that need a little input, like if now their thing is stuck to their skirt, so you'll help them.
Sure.
Photograph of a little kid that's just, it was finger painting. He's just finger paint all over his funny little apron they made him wear that was into the table with paint on it. And he's got his hands up and he's like, ah! He needed at that point. He needed someone to step in and say, how can I help you?
Hey.
That's all, And not saying, hey, let's get those hands clean. I like to say, how can I help you or what do you need? Let them make some decisions. And he did need help, and I helped him. He was fine.
It really is empowering to children when they get to make decisions. When we think about it, if we can step back and think about how few decisions children get to make for themselves.
And they could be very frustrated. I'm thinking of some little pre-kindergarten kids that I worked with. They so badly want to be in charge of their own work and their own. But, well, hopefully in more preschools now, they do get to do that. But when I was working with a group, they were just almost like wrapped in rope. They just didn't know how to move forward because they didn't know what they were allowed to do. So I started using the phrase, give them permission to be creative.
Yes.
There you go. And I can remember another group I worked with. It was, oh my gosh, like 300 kids in a gymnasium. It was a nightmare for me. But all these kids kept coming up. They were, I think, third grade, fourth grade, and saying, but what do we do? And there's 5 stations of things to do. And I said, I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to show me what to do. And they're like, really? I said, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Really? They were so like, what? And there were some kids that just simply stood there, in shock, and other kids who dove right in. So the ones who were struggling, you say, hey, let's go over here to the table where there's, I don't know, whatever, gluing sequins on sticks or something, and just do what you want. There's no right or wrong. Oh, that's another one. There's no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong.
There's your way.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things to do as a trainer, and I know you've done this too, is to go into a classroom of adults and set up those same materials and watch them freak out and ask the same questions. What am I supposed to do? And it's crazy how many adults don't feel that they have permission to experience art materials with freedom and with confidence and with creativity.
I have seen that over and over, and it's a little bit heartbreaking, but then you figure, okay, this is the first day they've tried this. it's not like they've been doing it since they were 4 years old. So,
And
yeah,
what's beautiful
it
though,
takes
MaryAnn,
time.
is I'm sure you've seen it too, is once they get going, the room is buzzing, the laughter
Yes.
starts, the joy comes out. And I just like to sit back as the facilitator, the trainer, and watch this. And I'm like, look at you. Look, you are your best example of what it should look like with your children. Look at you as adults, just they're taking deep breaths and jumping in. Oh, I love it. I just get so excited when I do that. I need to do that with homeschool moms. I'm going to make a
Apparently,
whole
we're
talk on
seeing the same things and working with different people, but we have some
it. Isn't that interesting?
universal
Yeah.
experiences that are the same. And one thing I've noticed with adults when I do that type of workshop is the ones who really don't know what to do, um, they usually write their name with a crayon, or they write their name with a paintbrush, because they just don't even know what to do. But in the process of doing that, it breaks that door open. And like you said, give them enough time, and then they open up too. And I would always have enough stations that once they got rolling, then they started experimenting too. So
Yes.
there's hope for even us grown-ups.
Absolutely. It isn't too late. I mean, it's harder. I think it's harder the older you get, and you might have your own aversions to that, the messiness or whatever. But if you can just let yourself go and give yourself permission to dive in, I think it can be beautiful, a beautiful lesson for adults
I
too.
was going to mention an activity, an experience that I saw adults start to go absolutely crazy with. Well, I'm going to mention two. One was in the olden days, like when I first got married, there were these things called warming trays. And
Yes.
it's like something you would see at a buffet table. It's electric. It's just a flat thing that keeps food warm. But if you put a piece of paper on a warming tray, and a child takes an old crayon and starts to draw on that warm paper, the crayon starts to melt. And when adults do this, you can just hear them almost like scream with delight. Oh, I can't believe it! And then they're holding it up. Look at it! The surprise for them with a material that isn't as common. That one. And then another one is, it's called a crayon resist. So you resist means the crayon will resist liquids because it's a wax. So it'll resist paint in particular. So they color brightly with crayon and then they paint over it. And in my case, at my workshop, they had spray bottles of paint that just mist the paint rather than like a stream. So
Yeah.
spray your crayon drawing, then take a credit card, well, maybe a gift card, not a credit card, and you scrape the paint away. And here they come again. Oh, look what I did! And kids love absolutely love those same projects. But
Yeah.
it's fun to see an adult discover the joy of exploring.
It is. It's very exciting for me to watch the adults get it as much as the children. Because again, if we can get to the adults, they're the ones that are going to impact their own children if they're homeschooling the most. I mean, we're not going to be there, even though they can be there because you have lots of books. How many books have you written?
What was that last sentence?
How many books have you written on the subject?
Oh, I really should count that sometime. I know this sounds ridiculous that I don't actually know. I think it's 20.
Wow. That's a lot.
I know. Like I said, it started in 1985, and my first book did so well that then I wrote a book called Mudworks, which was just all of the squishy clay and dough things that kids can do. And they were not my recipes. I just kind of brought them all together, like cornstarch dough and Kool-Aid dough and working with plaster of Paris and just all these squishy things. And that became a bestseller.
That's amazing.
And I think
I remember all these books.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, before I even met you, I remember those books. Like as an early childhood person in college and my first jobs, I remember specifically having the book Mudworks. Isn't that crazy?
That's good for my heart. That's good to hear.
No, it was true. And I remember going, this is what it's about as a young child development person. For me, I remember, are you going to pull some of them?
Oh, I was going to grab something, but I
Yeah.
can't grab it.
So where can they find your books? Like, what's the best way to find you now? I know you've got some different options for people. So if they say, oh my gosh, I love this lady, I'm going to buy all 20, where should they go?
Well, I'm going to say a funny one first, and then I'll give you the truth.
Okay.
I was at a garage sale the other day where a church was not going to have their preschool anymore, and so they had all their preschool materials out, and there was a whole table full of my own books for like $1. And
Did you buy them?
I mean, almost every title. And it's just, I was really happy to see that, because that means someone else is going to benefit their child, and they didn't have to pay hardly anything. Okay, well, we all know about Amazon.
Yes.
And Amazon has all my books. In the publishing world, we call Amazon the beast because they're so hard on publishers and authors, but they are a fabulous resource. So
sure.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, one of the easiest things to do is I have my own website. It's called Bright Ring, bright like the sun and ring like your jewelry, brightring.com. And all the books are available there. Even ebooks, that you can look at on your Kindle or your iPad, that's all available everywhere. I really know better because where do you go? I mean, even I go to Amazon first usually, so, that's probably the easiest way. But, bookstore, and if they don't have it, ask them to get it, and they will. And what book?
Yeah,
well, on my website, you could really get examples. I have 3 art experiences that you can take from the website just to get to know the different books. And no charge, just simply.
I think that's so important.
What I wanted to say.
What? Say it. I'm ready.
So, anyone who still is involved with Facebook, I have a group on Facebook called Process Art with MaryAnn Kohl, and Kohl is Kohl, like the Egyptian eyeliner.
Oh.
I know. Where was I going? Oh, yeah, Process Art with MaryAnn Kohl, and I have, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12,000 members on that site. You have to answer some little questions to get into the group, but it's like, have you heard of Process Art? Yes, no. And then the people that contribute, you can do a looky-loo and just get ideas, or you can contribute photographs of what your kids have done. Be careful about showing their faces if you don't have permission to show them, full face. A lot of people put little smudges over kids' faces, but that Process Art group it blows me away every single day what people are contributing as ideas. Things I never thought of doing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Are you in my group?
I am. I'm a member in your group.
Hey, so one wonderful thing that happened with that Scribble Art book I showed you was, I don't have a large group of kids that I work with now on a regular basis. So I went to my Process Art group and I said, hey, I need photographs for a new book I'm doing. Can I interest anyone in helping me? I can assign you an art project or experience, and you take pictures of it. And if they get into the book, then I'll give you a free book. I felt a little bad. I wasn't paying anyone, but I couldn't. I don't have that kind of money. So the whole book of Scribble Art is filled with photographs that actual people have taken of actual children or their art, and it's just, I'm just so proud of it. I'm proud of them.
Absolutely. It just makes a difference. I mean, I think
it's so real.
But I think art is scary. I think we talk about, some of the scary subjects. I think art for parents of young children, it's scary. And so parents sometimes just put it on the back burner and discount it as not needed. And what I hope we're doing today is saying, oh, no, let's make this like primary focus. Let's focus on bringing some art and progress.
I agree. There's this big thing about that we're, coming to realize now in the past 10 years or so that play is important. And it's like, kids need to play. And really, Process Art is playing with art materials. To the child, that's kind of what they would think, but it's not really playing. It's learning. It's all this I'm just going to show you a page that might be out of the book that might kind of, okay, here's a simple one. Let's see if it'll show up children's art.
Yes.
Wait, this is called, what is it called? Can you read it?
Footsie prints.
Footsie prints. I mean, it's so easy. Kids stand on a little, well, put some paper on the floor and put some blobs of paint on the paper. This is an easy way. And then the child walks in the paint and makes footprints. Okay, that could be a messy one, but if you're prepared, you maybe have another little tub of water and a towel and a little chair, and they can sit down and do they love to wash their feet? Yes. So, that's more of a one-on-one of kids coming through walking on paper. You wouldn't have all 30 kids jumping around on the paper at the same time.
Well, that's also the beautiful thing about that one, though. It's a sensory experience. It's not just an art experience. They're getting that sensory input. So that's going to be fabulous for them. So again, so much of art is, dual benefits. It's not just art and the creativity, but it's also meeting other areas of learning. So
it's not necessarily expecting a child to be an artist.
Correct.
They're exploring art, and there will be kids who shine with a talent. I mean, that's the same thing. Like, I'll put the kids in a room and we're all going to learn to play the violin. They do that in third or fourth grade in a lot of schools, and they're all like, and then there's that one kid going, that has a talent. And we have to be careful not to confuse art exploring with art talent, because
so good.
Certainly not everyone is. I am not particularly an artist, but I'm really good at getting children to explore art. But people always say, oh, well, you're an artist. Actually, no. I mean, I like to draw and I have fun, but I'm not the talented artist that becomes famous and has a gallery, So we have to kind of separate from that very formal art to just exploring. It's like you were just saying, or I said, it's like play, and there's another kind of thing going on now called loose art, where kids have baskets of different materials, buttons or pine cones or whatever, and they can just play with them and put them on another tray and arrange them in patterns. Or I'm so happy to see this expanding beyond just process art. It's like, oh, we're really letting kids explore and think,
discover for themselves.
Discovering.
It's beautiful. It's the best. I mean, to me, there's nothing better than to watch a child figure something out for themselves. Like, it is the ultimate thing to get to enjoy for me, is to watch a child who's mixed two colors and think they've invented another color, or they've figured out that these parts go together and it matches. It's just fascinating. Or they've sat and watched a butterfly and its movement, all of it, wonder and discovery. Just it thrills me. But what it does take is time. It takes time, and it takes willingness to allow it to happen. And I think that's the biggest thing I hope our parents hear us say. It's not a rush.
I like that willingness word. I've been saying give them permission, but that almost sounds a little too formal. But we need to be willing to let them lead in their own discovery.
Absolutely.
And yes, we can have input.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're just with one child, you're going to end up, talking more together than you do with a whole room full at one time. Oh, that's another thing. Don't expect to have Play-Doh set up for 25 kids where they're all doing Play-Doh at the same time. I suggest having a station or a center where the child goes there and does Play-Doh, or you gather a group of 5 together.
I was going to say, most of my listeners are at home, so they might have 3 or 4 kids. And so, I would say that's okay. You could definitely have Play-Doh for that, but also be willing to let one leave. If one is not interested in Play-Doh, don't force them to stay and sit at the Play-Doh. I mean, let kids come and go. And if that child is not interested today, doesn't mean they might not be interested tomorrow. So reintroduce materials. Don't just say, oh, they didn't like that. That was a waste of time. Well, maybe that day they were hungry, or that day they were tired. So try it again. Don't just be one and done.
I totally get that, and I'm glad you said it that way, which made me get this vision in my head of this little guy who refused to paint. Refused. No easel, no footprinting, nothing. No paint.
Yes.
And I remember the day we had pumpkins and little pumpkins and hammers and golf tees. And he was hammering golf tees into those pumpkins in the most beautiful pattern, where other kids were just hammering them in just for trying it for the first time. But he became so enthralled with his pumpkin hammering. So if there's a child who's not interested in one kind of art, get them excited about a different material or a different kind. And oftentimes, really active little boys want something that's really going on. They want Aspen. Which reminds me, I read a book called Aspen Art, and it's all little things that are moving or things that come together and make. I just saw one on my process art group. This gal thought this up. It's so cute. So she had little makeup pads and cotton balls, and she put them on it. There was a piece of paper on the tray, then she put these little makeup pads and a few cotton balls on paper, and then the kids could dab those with liquid watercolors, which is one of my favorite materials. We can talk about it if you want.
I love that.
And then she had them, she's telling them the technique, right? This is part of process art. Sometimes you say, hey, try this. So they had these little hammers, and they were hammering the paint on these little pads, and the paint would splash out in a sunburst, and they were going all over their tray. And then they wanted, more pads and more paper, and then they didn't need the hammer because now we're trying a thumb, and how that activity grew with the adult's idea, but not the adult saying you have to make this into a flower or whatever. Yeah. And there were
put the eyes
kids in the group who were making flowers because they could see that, it's like a sunflower.
Right. So good. So good. I hope, listen, we are probably out of time. So people are probably got to go to the store about all the art things. So any final words?
I want to talk all day.
Yes, we're going to hang up and we're going to keep talking because we have not seen it. I mean, we're not going to hang up. We're going to push stop on the record so that you and I can just catch up. But thank you for being here officially. And we will
inviting me. I had such fun seeing you and talking to you.
And I will put a link to all your books and tell them all the good places they can find you. I'll put a link to your Facebook group too so they can find you there.
Thank you. Thank you. That's lovely.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording now. So bye. But not